This is MLB Now. We are the show for the thinking fan. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Brian Kenny. Should be a good show today. Jason Stark and Joel Sherman on the panel. Bo Porter joins us later. He's a coach with the Angels. He promised an emphasis on baseball-y details with that ball club. He used to be here with us, and it is happening. The Angels playing basically 500 ball. Look promising post-Ohtani. We'll talk to Bo. And we'll have our baseball-y plays, including a minor league play that makes the cut. But first, Justin Verlander making a season debut tonight, the return of a legendary pitcher, and we are fortunate. While we're seeing the de-emphasis of starting pitching and the rise of bullpenning, we're also in a golden age of veteran Hall of Fame pitchers. So let's ask the question, who is the best pitcher of this generation? Let's do a little digging in. There are basically 4 pitchers who are still active and Hall of Fame caliber. That top 4, Clayton Kershaw, Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, and though he has yet to latch on to a ball club this year, Zack Greinke. Kershaw is the youngest, age 36 season. Verlander, the oldest, at 41. It's a rare grouping because they've all been pitching for a good period of time after we knew they were already Hall of Famers. That doesn't happen a lot. They'd all won Cy Young Awards by the time they were 28. So let's try to rank the best of the group. First, by their park-adjusted ERA. This is for pitchers who debuted by 2004. Clayton Kershaw, a 157, far and away number 1. 100 is league average, by the way. 157, that's just ahead of Pedro Martinez. Clayton Kershaw is number 1 all-time in the history of baseball. From there, you've got a fall-up. Scherzer and Verlander, 134, 132, essentially the same. And to David Price, Cole Hamels, and Zack Greinke down at 121. He's got a lot more innings, but again, this is the basic inning-for-inning run prevention. Clayton Kershaw can't be touched. But that's regular season. I think the postseason matters a lot now when it comes to addressing a career, especially in the age of expanded playoffs, where the sample size is now quite large. It wasn't in the 1950s, right, unless you pitched for the Yankees and you're Whitey Ford. But it does now. The top guys get reps, and it's fair to bring that up. Here are the top performers in the postseason in this generation. These are the best ERAs for those with at least 70 innings of work. It's a new grouping, right? All new guys. Madison Bumgarner is a postseason legend, a 2.11 in 102 innings. Jon Lester, though, great work, 154 innings, a 2.51. 50 more innings than Madison Bumgarner. Cliff Lee was dominant. Adam Wainwright, impressive, 114 innings, a 2.83. That's starting and relieving. So it's interesting. These 4 probably don't get big Hall of Fame consideration. Maybe we should reconsider. So, back to the big 4. Postseason, Verlander, 226. That's a full season of postseason work, a 3.58. Pretty good. Scherzer, 143 innings, a 3.78. Zack Greinke, 113 innings, had his ups and downs, some good and bad, had a 4.14. And Kershaw, 194 innings, a 4.49 ERA. That's 2 full runs higher than his regular season ERA. There was good and bad. There was short rest, we know, but that has to count against him. So that matters. But for now, let's try to compare apples to apples, as we say. Basically, you have innings, you have runs allowed. How much quality did you bring over the long haul? And for that, we use WAR. Innings, run prevention, and number 1 is Justin Verlander. Just ahead of Kershaw, it's not that far away. It's only about 4 away from there, 7 ahead of Scherzer. And we're not done just yet. Race is not over. Greinke is 4th at 72. Keep in mind, a WAR of 60 is a basic Hall of Fame level. These guys are over 70. They're there. And we put in the top 10 just to show a little broader context. Cole Hamels is near 60. King Felix, Chris Sale, those guys were great pitchers, but they're under 50. There's Jon Lester. Jacob deGrom snips in 2. And Adam Wainwright there at 40. Madison Bumgarner, by the way, is at 37, just below there. But pitcher of the generation, regular season volume, a little bit of postseason right now. Fellas, I say it's Justin Verlander. I want to know what you think on X at MLB Now. We have an esteemed panel. Jason Stark, Joel Sherman. Jason, you're first. Make a call. Best pitcher of the generation. This is your wheelhouse, pal.
I think you just got it right. I think it's Justin Verlander, BK. First of all, he's done it the longest. He's now 20 seasons down the line of being great. 3 Cy Youngs. Second twice. I know Mrs. Verlander thinks he probably should have won both those years.
She's probably right, yeah.
And probably right. I just have such admiration for Justin Verlander, the way he goes about it, the way he aspires to be the Tom Brady of his generation.
Okay, who do you got?
Let's see if I can play off of that. In some way, I think his second place finish to Blake Snell is a lot about this conversation. He would just had more than Blake Snell that year. He should have won. Like, he kept the greatness with more innings than Snell. Like, this, to me, 3 Cy Youngs, like the other guys, an MVP like Kershaw. And to your point about postseason, they've all had somewhat problematic issues along the way in the postseason, but Verlander's results are the best.
Yeah.
I often play a game, especially when we're voting for the Hall of Fame. I play a little bit of whose career would I most like? I would most like to have had Justin Verlander's career. We talk about that we're never going to have a 300-game winner again. Are we ever going to have a 250-game winner again? He might be the last of that.
You know, it is, and I know we're going to talk about milestones and that sort of thing, Jason, later, but it is rare, correct, that we knew these guys were Hall of Famers, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, and yet we got to see them play out through their 30s. It's rare where, while we're talking about, the demise of the starting pitcher, there's kind of this whole grouping of great starting pitchers roaming the earth.
Right, and all of them walk around thinking, we're the last of our kind. I mean, Garrett Cole is probably an exception. Zach Wheeler's got a little of that going on, but Verlander, Scherzer, Kershaw, we don't just look at them as different. I think pitchers in the game, including themselves, look at them as different.
How do we assess Kershaw's postseason? Again, the facts are the facts, right?
Yeah, look, there's some weird stuff that's going on in the postseason with him. All the issues just against the Cardinals, who seem to know what's coming. The year the Astros seem to know what's coming, but this happened, and you know, it's not going to keep Clayton Kershaw from being an easy first ballot Hall of Famer, but it's part of his permanent record that we can't ignore.
There's just, I cannot find another Hall of Fame level pitcher, you know, kind of a Jim Palmer, Bob Feller level, Robin Roberts, where a guy has had a significant amount of work in the postseason and has struggled like Kershaw. And again, Kershaw, he's not 10th in ERA plus. He's first. Yeah. He's number 1. So it is so strange.
Yeah, I'll give some quick love to your colleague and our friend Andy McCullough has a book coming out about Clayton Kershaw in a couple of weeks. I've read the book already. It really details, start for start, every problem along the way. A lot of it is kind of bullheadedness of pitching when maybe he shouldn't, pitching on short rest, going that 3rd or 4th time through the lineup because he's Clayton Kershaw instead of getting the kind of help almost anyone else would get. Having said that, if this discussion ended at the regular season, he wins the conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Once you add the postseason, it's problematic enough to me that Verlander moves ahead of
Let's have another conversation at some point. It is interesting that when you look at the best ERAs, and it's not Verlander's had success, so has Scherzer in the postseason, but they're different names. Bumgarner, Lester, Lee, Wainwright, right? And it's like, those guys are not Hall of Famers. I don't know. Again, we're going to reconsider at some point.
Well, what about Hamels and CeCe, who...
Sure, CeCe.
They're responsible for trophies.
Right, and isn't that what we're doing, right? And think of how valuable, like, your Game 1 start is in a division series these days or an LCS. You know, it's the most important thing. All right, meantime. Speaking of the Astros struggling so far, off to a 6-14 start. They're in Washington tonight, so I don't think we're doing concern, panic, or doom just yet, but I know, Joel, you've written a column. Oh, we are. Hold on. I saw your column in the Post, Joel. I think you were severely concerned at the very least, right?
Yeah, I was concerned. I remain concerned. Let's see if I could flip the other side of it, because you want to have some dispassion, right? There was a point last year in August to September where Texas went 4-16. They won the World Series, right? We know the stories. The Nationals began a season 19-31 and won a World Series. The Braves 30-35. If you go, there's a site called Power Rankings Guru. The toughest schedule to date at this point, Astros. Easiest schedule the rest of the season, Astros. They're getting Verlander back tonight. They should get Framber Valdez maybe next week. They are the Astros, and there's a lot of season to go. Having said that,
yes, okay.
You know, 6-14 is very concerning because you got to dig yourself out. But in an age of 3 wild cards, I'll say this. They're suddenly on my radar for, Are they like last year's Cardinals where suddenly they're sellers in July? Like where we never saw it coming? And yet we're a long way from here to there.
Yeah, you can put yourself out of it. The Cardinals are an example of that. Like, they were so terrible, they were just done. White Sox, too. White Sox and Cardinals last year were out. I don't think they're a malaise club, though. Remember how malaise clubs all of last year? I think the horsepower is still, there's too much there for them to fall apart.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing here. Overreacting to April is one of the things we do the best. We're very good at it. But if you ask yourself, what is likely to happen when you look at the Astros? I'm pretty sure Alex Bregman will hit a homer. I'm pretty sure that Jose Abreu will hit over 100. I'm pretty sure that Hader and Presley will have ERAs under 8. These are things that are sure to happen.
The bar is low for the pal.
That's where they are right now.
Abreu might not recover, but I think there's just too much quality all around. And I don't like the Hader signing, but for this year, it should be good.
The only thing I would add is, yes, I agree. If you told me today you got to bet on one side of this or the other, I would go with the Astros. The pedigree, 7 straight ALCS, at least the last 7 years. But if we were doing this show on this date last year, we'd be, come on, the Yankees are going to be fine. The Cardinals are going to be fine. The Padres are going to be fine. The Mets are going to be fine. Like, sometimes a team falls in the quicksand and doesn't get out. In an age of 3 wild cards, it's easier to get out. And yet those 4 teams didn't.
See, aren't we measuring the Astros against themselves, against their own period of dominance?
Yeah.
Like, since Joel's here, we have to do an NBA analogy. Isn't there a Warriors Cup here where the Warriors remind us that it's just not possible to sustain greatness forever with the same group?
So are you predicting Sacramento will knock them out in the play-in game at some point later this season?
I didn't even know there was a play-in game.
Yeah, we need a play-in game.
Yeah,
it'd be a lot of fun. Well, we used to have those. Sorry.
I remember. All right, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we got the showdown. All right, in a recent column, you were bemoaning the lack of old-timey milestones.
Is that what I did?
That's what you did. I used to love that stuff. I know Cy Young's win totals. I used to know Ty Cobb's hit total before they changed it. Hack Wilson's RBI total. But, at a certain point, why? Like, 500 home runs has been kind of ruined. 3,000 hits is still cool. I like that. 300 wins, the pitching has changed. We don't have one guy out there all afternoon. Like, do we still need these things?
What's happened to you?
I've killed the win, and it doesn't bother. I don't know how many wins Justin Verlander has. It doesn't affect the way I think about him.
No, it doesn't have to affect the way you think about him. He was great whether he gets to 300 wins.
Where is he? How many wins?
He's at 253.
Okay, that's nice.
So, yeah. So he has a chance to get there. He's probably the only guy walking around our planet who does.
No, he's not getting there. He's 41 already, right? So he's not getting
there. Well, you can't. 257, I'm sorry. 257. Don't tell him that he can't. But all right, here is the deal. Look, change is good. Life changes. Baseball changes. We're all fine with it. I want to quote, though, one of your favorite people in the world, Bill James, wrote just this year, change is good until you get so damn much of it that you no longer recognize that thing you used to love. And those numbers that you just poo-pooed, they are what makes baseball special.
But you know what? It's like, because the win thing alone, like, in order to do any win totals, you have to do live ball era, because baseball was so vastly different in the 19th century. So now baseball in the 21st century seems to be different than the 20th century. It didn't happen that fast. It happened a century at a time, Jason. You know what I'm saying? Guys used to win 400 games. Nobody wins You can't win 400 now. And Greg Maddux has 355, which is amazing for his era. And now 250 is the new 350.
Of course. Like, I'm not disputing that part. I'm just trying to remind you that these numbers are baseball's secret sauce. Like, there are people walking around.
But 500 homes used to be when I was a kid, and it's not. It was ruined. It was ruined.
It was ruined by a few players who were doing a thing that we're not talking about anymore, are we?
Well,
if somebody hits 500 now, won't we consider it to be legit?
I'd like to, but again, it's now that you went here. Now, there's how many guys are in the 500 home run club, which used to be the exclusive, province of greatness, and now it's just been littered. And it's just devalued. We had, I don't know, a dozen in a 10-year period, and it's just not as special. It used to be. It's not anymore.
You're so jaded. Okay, here are the guys with 500 home runs who are not in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Gee, what do they have in common?
Right.
I wonder why they're not in the Hall of Fame.
Associated with performance-enhancing drugs, right?
We know
and
why.
So even though when you had Cabrera and Pujols barreling through it, it was like, this used to be cool. And look, it's a shame, but it kind of devalued it. And there's plenty about baseball, like in deference to what you're saying about Bill James. There's plenty about baseball to love without having these certain milestones that we used to think were important. Like, I can move on. 3,000 hits I still like, but beyond that, I'm fine.
Okay, so you think I don't love baseball because I'm fixated on these numbers?
I'm saying you're fixated on things we grew up on, which is cool, but it's no longer what it was. It's been devalued.
All right, like if you ask any football fan about what 3,000 passing yards means.
They won't even know.
They don't even know.
Right.
But ask any baseball fan what 3,000 hits means. Do we have to explain it? We don't.
It used to be a lot more. Yeah. I get it. But I just
do?
And the wins thing. Again, when I'm giving Hall of Fame introductions, I give win totals because it was vastly important for guys who are pitching in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. It's just I don't think it's the barometer anymore. I think there are other things that we can look at. All right.
Want me to read that Bill James quote again?
Yeah, that's right. Break my heart. Giancarlo Stanton, speaking of guys that might get to 500 home runs, I don't think he will, but he's at 407. If he gets to 500, will he get your Hall of Fame vote?
I think he would. I actually got into this conversation with Bryce Harper when I was working on the column of which you spoke, and he said to me, Giancarlo Stanton's going to hit 500 homers, and he's going to be a Hall of Famer. And when I said, I don't know, he looked at me funny and started to argue the case, and it's made me think about
Bryce
it.
Harper's who's arguing?
Bryce Harper.
Bryce Harper
was arguing the case for Giancarlo, and we just showed a list of all of the guys in history who've hit 500 home runs and are not Hall of Famers. We see why they're not. We know why they're not. What is the black mark on Giancarlo? He was an MVP and finished second. Right? He's a home run derby legend. He almost hit 60 homers. He got Gold Glove votes one year.
Wow, you're really straining. Can I ask you one thing? Has he had a Hall of Fame career with the Yankees?
Say again?
Has Giancarlo Stanton had a Hall of Fame career with the Yankees?
He has not been a Hall of Famer as a Yankee.
He has not. All right, so if I'm saying that, he had 7 years with Miami, which were quite good. Do you know how many times he topped 130 games played with Miami? 3 times.
He got hit in the face.
I'm sorry he got hit in the face, but he played 123 games, 116, 74, and 119. He was sporadic even with Miami. He had 3 Hall of Fame seasons with Miami. He's had none with the Yankees. He's a one-dimensional player. For the last 5 years, he's had 1 year over 1 WAR. He's been kind of a drag on the Yankees system for the last 7 years. He's just not a Hall of Famer. He's one-dimensional player, and that one dimension is hitting long home runs. He's in the StatCast Hall of Fame, but that's it.
It's not ending well.
And it's been a long slog.
I'll concede that, but I think you're just breezing past what he was as a Marlin. Was he not the most feared slugger in the sport in those years? Tell me he was not.
He was a very good slugger. In 7 years with Miami, I have the numbers, I looked him up, he has a 150 OPS plus. That's high, right? Gary Sheffield had a 140 for his whole career. So he had 150 for 7 years. You know, in those years, he averaged 35 homers, right? That's good. 88 RBIs, 257 stolen bases. That's not a lot of total bases. Because, did I say stolen? Total bases. Total bases, 257. He did not produce a lot of volume. He had 3 years where he was kind of a monster, and then the other years, kind of lower production with a lot of home runs. Never a complete player, so he's just kind of a one-dimensional home run slugger.
He was actually a better outfielder than you remember. He committed himself to being a great outfielder in his MVP year, if I remember, and got Gold Glove votes, was excellent out
Even if
there.
we maintain like he was good. Right, I'm not even arguing.
He's not now,
yeah,
obviously.
No. But I'm stunned that you would vote, like, again, him versus Chase Utley, an all-around player. It's not even close.
They're different players.
Vastly different. And even guys who, like, had trouble staying on the field. in real time, I don't know how you say he gets a vote. I could see someone 25 years looking back at his record and going, wow, look at these totals and look at that. And he hit the ball so hard. He was this big feared slugger. I think when it's only his stats surviving, maybe, but when you're watching him, no.
Okay, you're Mr. Hall of Fame, so you give me a clarification here. 500 home runs with no cheating stigma is no longer worthy of Hall of Fame admission.
Correct. And if Darrell Evans got there or Dave King Kong Kingman got there, we were talking about it at the time. What happens if they get to 500? What do we do? Because they're not Hall of Famers. So this will be one that gets there. By the way, he's at 407. He's probably not getting there anyway. At this rate.
In the Bill James milestone calculator, he ranks him. There's a lot of Bill James.
I like how you're throwing Bill James in my face.
Here we go. He's got the #1 chance of getting there. 79% projection.
Is he
why you're a hero?
Since he's playing 18 and 23 games a year, you're making me go against.
When he squares a ball up, what happens to it?
Oh, he hits it very hard when it's very hittable. Yeah, I'll give you that.
So it has to be
see how it
hittable.
finishes here. All right, we'll take it a short break. When we come back, and go out to San Francisco. Interesting matchup tonight. Free agent pitchers head-to-head. Diamondbacks and Giants, Jordan Montgomery versus Blake Snell. That's coming up later, 10 Eastern. You can see it on Apple TV+. There's a plus now. Oh, that's the plus for savings? All right, anyway. StatCast is powered by Google Cloud. I'm glad you remembered that. Take a look at some StatCast numbers for these guys. Jordan Montgomery, again, he's more of a pitcher than a thrower. Again, his velo is 93.3. That's below league average for the fastball. But his sinker is the second best in baseball. Blake Snell misses bats. The whiff rate, that's the swing and miss rate, second among qualifiers. His curveball is the second best in all of baseball. These guys are part of a bigger group of mercurial free agents, I call them, or you could call them Scott Boras clients. A lot of this is not just Scott Boras, but this is like Bellinger has his ups and downs. Blake Snell, high ceiling, low floor. But look at the projected deals per MLB trade rumors, just basically what they thought, the intelligentsia thought these players would get, including Matt Chapman, JD Martinez, and what their actual contracts are. I would just want to throw in that one for $25 million for Jordan Montgomery is the highest single season salary for anybody who ever got a one-year deal. So it's not like, oh, they got crushed on the market, but they didn't get what we thought they would get.
Well, because I like to subtract, I did a subtraction between what the projected contracts for all those guys was versus what they wound up with. You know what the difference was? $571 million. So they came up $500 million short of the projections. And it's fascinating. I mean, there's a lot of plot lines here. We know it was a tough winter, but Ohtani got paid. Josh Hader got paid. Aaron Nola got paid.
Yamamoto got paid.
Got paid. It was the Scott Boras clients who came up short. What do you think was going on there?
I think it was mercurial performance. Again, when you're looking at Bellinger and Snell, even Matt Chapman, who is more consistent. I really like Matt Chapman, but at a certain price, right? What did you make of that?
So I think there was a collision of a few things. I think this was a difficult offseason. The regional sport network thing took a lot of teams out of it. There were certain teams that historically were going to be big spenders who were not. We could say the Dodgers were big spenders, but it was about for two specific players. You know, they were going to get Ohtani and Yamamoto. It wasn't like the fallback position was Snell and Bellinger. So there was that. And I do think that historically, Scott Boras has depended on a certain amount of irrationality by owners, especially, you called them mercurial. These are not, like Juan Soto is his client. He's going to go out in the market next offseason. He's going to kill it.
Yeah.
Because the blemishes are a lot smaller. These players all had blemishes of a certain type. And if you're trying to get at the high end in a difficult marketplace, and this was a difficult marketplace, it's tough to do it.
See, I agree with that. You're talking about all Boras clients. I don't think the Boras client thing had anything to do with it. Or if it did, maybe they liked dealing with him. They didn't. I think it was the rationality of the head of baseball operations, the new president of baseball operations or general manager. And the Cubs did this too. They were like, go talk to Jed, meaning go talk to Jed Hoyer. And when you talk to Jed Hoyer and his lieutenants, they're like, we've figured out what you're worth. We're not, we're going to pay that and not what you want.
All right. So you're saying it's a clash of the rationality of that group versus what the irrationality of what was being asked?
Yes. And look, working off the old model of, hey, going to the owner and saying your branding will greatly increase. Look, that was part of Ohtani's appeal too, because the guy can really play, obviously, but there's also branding. And they used to see it as he will elevate your whole club and the branding will be better and you'll sell T-shirts and jerseys. And it's like, nah, how much will the guy help you win? That's what a new GM thinks.
You know what we don't have here, because we can't know, because it's not going to be made completely public, is there were probably pretty good offers for all of these guys at some point where there wouldn't have been a $500+ million gap, right?
Like, we know that?
Well, I think there was a lot of reporting around the Yankees maybe offering 6 at 150 to Snell. Like, did they? I would think he could have gotten something over $100 million. Do I think Montgomery could have been dragged up over $100 million? I do. Do I think Bellinger could have been dragged up over $100 million? I do. That begins to cut the difference where, again, in an irrational market, maybe those players get towards what the ask was. In an irrational one, do you have to act early and get the best deal possible?
Is that Scott's thing, though? You know, like, if we bet against Scott Boras, we'd all be in Chapter 11. So I want that to be out there. But here's my question to both of you. Did Scott not read the room on this market?
Can I?
Because other agents did.
Yeah, what I would say about reading the room going forward is it's why I think the Players Association should be very involved in whatever we're dealing with, trying to help pitchers stay healthier. We can say that it was a late market for Snell and Montgomery and they got this. I'm wondering, will anybody give long money to starting pitchers moving forward if the injury factor is such, or are Snell and Montgomery's examples of, I'll give you a lot for a few years, but I just don't trust it, which is kind of reading the room moving forward?
Well, that was even a thing back when John Lester went from the Red Sox to the Cubs, and it ended up burning the Red Sox. It was like, no, actually, he was quite great in his 30s. But that was a thought by rational general managers at the time. You know, and injuries, maybe they're a little worse now. I don't think they are than 2011, 2014. I'm not sure. But, yeah, I just think, like, that's always going to be. I think the market acted rationally this time. There's something to what you're saying, that there may have been better overall deals earlier, but there weren't late. Lucrative deals late, but very short term. Back here on MLB Now, here's the new coaching staff for the Los Angeles Angels. Again, their post-Shohei Ohtani world. Ron Washington named manager. You see the rest of the way, all the way down to Bo Porter, first base coach. E.Y. Sr. at third base. A lot of the guys we've been talking about here on MLB Now, including Bo Porter, MLB Now alumnus and Angels coach right now. We've talked so much through the latter part of last year, at the end of the season, through spring training. We welcome him back now. Bo, it's Brian Kenny. So great to have you back on the show.
BK, thank you so much for having me on the show. They start to look at it in a different light. They're now looking at that extra 90 feet as this is going to impact our ability to score runs. It's not just base running. It's paying attention to all of the integral details, whether it's positioning, whether it's arm strength, whether it's a pitcher's pick move to first base or second base, anything that's going to give us a competitive advantage. I give our players just a tremendous amount of credit, because the information is only as good as the people that are going to use it. And they have done a tremendous job of using all the information that our entire coaching staff has shared with them throughout the course of spring training and early this season.
Mike Trout's off to a great start, too, Bo. Like his spring, explain his spring. You guys had him playing baseball. Explain what you did with Mike Trout. It's going to seem simple, but it's not. Explain.
Well, it all started with Ron Washington. As soon as he was hired, he contacted myself. He contacted EY Sr. and said, look, we're going to go visit with Mike. And we were all on board with making that trip. Mike invited us into his home, and we sat down and we just talked about the organization. We talked about him. We talked about the last few years and just wanted to get his input of how do we get this moving in the right direction. And one thing that was evident coming out of that meeting was that Mike just wanted to play baseball. He wanted to play baseball. He wanted to be free. And, we talked about some things that we felt like he was going to be able to do to get his game back to being the best player in baseball, in which stealing bases is a huge part of that. And he has taken it by storm, and the results are what they are. But to his credit, Mike Trout just wants to play baseball, and he's one of the greatest players of our generation.
Yeah, you had him play. I know in spring training he was playing 6-7 innings every day. You had him on road. He was getting on the bus, going on the road, the whole thing. So it's just a slightly different thing, but it is different. I want to ask you this too. Last thing, and we have to keep this quick. But Anthony Rendon leading off. Explain why you're doing that, because you've stayed with that.
Yes, it's something that Wash and I talked about early on in spring training. We had several different lineups in which we were running out there, and you start to look at Anthony Rendon. One, he has a great approach at the plate, so he's not going to expand his zone. He's going to take his walks. He can hit with men in scoring position, and he doesn't worry about getting to 2 strikes. And then once he's on the base path, he's an excellent base runner. So when you start to look at a guy who doesn't swing and miss, he makes contact, he doesn't expand his zone, it's going to give you the quality of at-bats in which you're looking for at the leadoff spot.
I tell you, when we're looking at this, I was stunned. Like, he doesn't chase. He's top 10. He is number 1 in contact. I know we got off to a slow start, but you see, last 12 games, 397 on base. Done deal.
Yes.
And getting that out there.
Yes, he is.
Wow.
He is doing a tremendous job at the top of the lineup.
But we got to go. Next time we talk, we'll talk Logan O'Hoppe, Zach Neto, your young guys, your young core. But great to see you guys getting off to a nice start. And best of luck. We'll talk to you again, Bo. Thank you.